Hey everyone, ready to dive into something huge. We're talking heaven,
Okay.
but not the heaven you're thinking of.
Yeah.
We're ditching the stereotypes.
Right.
No harps, no halos.
Right.
We're going deep with Dr. Roy E. Richmond, who says heaven isn't a far-off place, but a state of being.
A state of being we can access now. It is intriguing. He takes this really mysterious concept and makes it, I don't know, feel possible.
That's what I thought. He throws out this heaven on earth idea, and it feels huge, but also, not about you, but also vague at the same time.
Yeah.
So how do we even understand that? What does that even mean?
Well, that's where Dr. Richmond, he kind of turns things on their head, right? Because we think of heaven as this reward, like,
You've been good, you go to this?
yeah, you die, you've been good, you go to this place. But he's saying it's less about the location, more about consciousness.
A higher state of consciousness.
Yeah, a higher state of consciousness that we can tap into. Like now,
Okay, so less about harps and halos, more about how would you even know? How would someone even know if they'd stumbled into this higher consciousness thing?
that's a great question. And he talks about it being this kind of complete shift in how you see things. Like you start to see yourself and the world through, he calls it, this lens of visible spirit. So it's like,
Visible spirit.
yeah, and imagine like all of a sudden you can see the interconnectedness of everything
Wow.
and how this divine energy flows through all things.
Like you're awake all of a sudden.
You're awake, yeah, you're seeing like a whole new dimension of reality.
So it's not just about feeling good or being optimistic. It's like a fundamental shift in how you see like the fabric of existence.
Exactly, exactly. And he says this visible spirit, it's not something that you earn. It's actually, he argues it's our true nature. He even compares it to, that phrase in the Bible, the cool of the day?
Okay, yeah.
Kind of implying that it's something that's familiar. Like it's always been there.
It's always been there under the surface.
It's right there. And he says that we can access it, through things like mindfulness, meditation, being out in nature. I mean, have you ever had those moments where you're just completely absorbed in something, maybe listening to music, being out in nature, and you feel this like,
Yeah,
this awe, this oneness?
totally, yeah. Like time stops and you're just present.
Yes, those are glimpses.
Right.
He's saying those are glimpses of what he's talking about. He even talks about the pineal gland, which is often called the third eye,
Right.
as having a role in accessing this spiritual realm.
So he's kind of like weaving together this
Yes.
ancient
Yeah.
spiritual idea
Yeah.
with what we're learning about science now, too.
Yeah, and it's like this physical part of our brain, he's saying, is wired for this.
Yeah. Like we're designed to experience this.
Yeah.
But then he takes it a step further, right? Like he really starts to challenge traditional religion and those views. He's not a fan of waiting around for heaven after we die.
No.
He wants it now, right?
He talks about daily resurrection.
Daily resurrection.
Yeah, like this life right here, right now. This is where we're supposed to be tapping into that. This is it. And he even uses Colossians, I think it's 1.5, where it says, hope laid up for you in heaven to support this.
Interesting.
He's saying it's not about waiting for the afterlife, but it's experiencing that hope now, that awakening now.
It's like he's saying, stop postponing your joy. Like heaven is now. It's available now. But it's also not all rainbows and butterflies.
Yeah.
He has this whole thing about idols.
Yes, he does.
And this is where I think it gets really interesting for how we live today in
Yeah.
our modern world.
Yeah.
Because when he talks about idols, it's not just, statues or figures.
Right.
He's talking about anything that we put before cultivating that connection to our visible spirit.
Anything. And I think that's what's so powerful about it, because he's speaking to like our modern condition in a way.
Right.
So it's like, think about it. How many of us are chasing after, wealth or status or the perfect Instagram feed?
Oh, yeah.
And we get so caught up in these external things that we forget about that inner work, the cultivation of that visible spirit.
Right. And so these things aren't bad in and of themselves. It's when they become,
When they become like idols.
they become idols
Yeah. And they distract us.
from
With
that
a-
true purpose,
That true purpose. Yeah.
which is connecting to the visible spirit.
Exactly. And what's interesting? He talks about messengers.
Messengers.
He brings up this idea of messengers, and he's referring to Matthew.
Okay.
I think it's Matthew 18.10, where Jesus is talking about these messengers who see the face of God.
Okay, so are we talking about like angels here or some sort of supernatural being? What's going on with these messengers?
That's what I thought too at first, but he has a really interesting take on it. He's actually saying he thinks these messengers are something within us,
Oh.
like our own
Our own intuition,
Intuition, yeah, our own spiritual faculties.
that inner voice that we're always told to listen to.
Yes, and how often do we ignore it?
Right.
So he's saying they're constantly there trying to guide us.
Give us those little nudges.
Those nudges, yeah, those gut feelings that you get.
Or moments of sudden clarity.
Exactly. He's like, those are your messengers.
Oh, wow.
Trying to get your attention.
Okay, so we've got these messengers, but then he also talks about little children needing nurturing. And this is where I feel like it gets a little confusing for me.
Right. Like, what is he talking about?
Yeah, he's speaking in riddles.
I know, but that's what's so fun about diving into his work.
It makes you think.
It does. It makes you think. And I love how he uses these, like, vivid images and metaphors.
Yeah.
So when he says little children, he's talking about that part of ourselves that's still connected to that, like, childlike sense of wonder.
That pureness.
That pureness.
Yeah.
You know, before we kind of built up all these walls and defenses.
And he's saying we need to protect that.
We need to nurture it. He's basically saying that in order to access this heaven on earth, we have to nurture the little children within.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and create space for that curiosity, that openness to experience.
Joy
Yeah.
that we see in little kids.
So I'm seeing this connection now between these messengers and these little children, almost like they're working together to guide us.
I think you're right. It's like the messengers are the wise guides, the
Yeah.
ones who are like, hey, here's the path.
This is the way.
And the little children are the ones that are like, come on, let's go. It'll be fun.
Let's go with joy.
Yeah, approach it with that sense of joy and wonder.
I like that. So how do we actually do this? How do we balance this whole pursuit of this interconnection with just everyday life?
Right. Because it's great in theory, but how do we actually make it happen?
Yeah.
Well, he talks about heaven and earth as two kind of realms of consciousness,
Okay.
where heaven represents this realm of like pure ideas.
That visible spirit.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
earth is where those ideas manifest in the physical world.
So it's not about picking one over the other, but finding a way
To bridge the two.
to bridge the gap.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he says we build that bridge through those moments of cool of the day. Okay, those moments of presence and connection we were talking about.
Exactly. Those moments where we're consciously tuning in to that visible spirit.
Weaving it into our lives.
Weaving it in. Yeah. And he reminds us that it's not some passive process.
Right.
Remember how he talks about daily resurrection?
Yeah.
Well, he connects that idea to those biblical passages where God speaks through people,
Okay.
like in Deuteronomy and Isaiah,
So it's like we become these channels for that,
not that visible spirit.
not just receiving it, but we embody
Yes. It's about recognizing that we have an active role to play in manifesting this heaven on earth.
So it's less about waiting for something to happen to us and more about us stepping into,
Stepping into our power as co-creators.
right, and using our gifts and our talents and our actions to,
To bring more love and compassion and understanding into the world.
which sounds a lot like what heaven is all about.
Exactly. And you know, remember those messengers he was talking about? He believes that divine inspiration can come through anything. Through artists, musicians, writers, everyday people.
Oh, yeah.
It's about being open to those messages, those nudges from the universe, wherever they may come from.
It's like he's encouraging us to look at the world as this symphony of inspiration, and we each have a part to play. This is definitely making me rethink what heaven could be. It's less about escaping and more about changing things here. Right?
Yeah, and that's what I love about Dr. Richmond's perspective. He challenges us to ask, what if heaven isn't something we wait for? What if it's something we make happen through how we live?
Every single day.
Yeah, our words, our actions, even our thoughts. Like, what if we just stop seeing ourselves as separate from that and embrace the fact that we are that expressing itself in the world?
Instead of looking up, we should be looking within and all around us.
Exactly. And that's what I find so inspiring. He doesn't just give us these big ideas, but he actually gives us a way to live them out. Like, cultivate those moments of cool of the day, listen to your messengers, nurture that childlike part of yourself.
Yeah, it's not just concepts. It's like he's
Yeah.
giving us tools.
Yeah, tools we can use to create that heavenly experience here and now.
Wow, what a deep dive this has been. We went from harps and pearly gates to pineal glands and visible spirit. So if our listener was only going to take away one thing from all of this, what would you want that to be?
That's a great question. I think for me, the most powerful thing Dr. Richmond said is that heaven isn't some reward you get later. It's here now. It's realizing that that visible spirit, that divine spark, it's already a part of who we are.
It's not separate from us.
Not at all. And when we start to live from that awareness, it changes everything.
Our relationships, our work, how we see the world, it's huge.
It really is. It's like he's saying, stop waiting for heaven, start living it.
And that's something we can all do starting right now. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us, everyone. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep exploring what's inside. You never know what you might find.